How's everybody doing today? Hey, it's Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. I'm a talk show host, researcher, lecturer, writer, and historian. It is Saturday, May 15th, 2021, and we are live. I want to come on for a few minutes and let you know about the online course that I teach on Saturdays. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. This is a 9-week online course that I teach, and we deal with thousands of years of history and what led up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. So I teach it today. We're going to start around 12:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Normally it's noon. Normally it's 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, but I was up really late editing video from my daily radio show. So we're going to get started a little late today. And I'm waiting for people to log into the class also. So we deal with thousands of years of history, and we deal with what led up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place also. Okay. And in the past couple of weeks, if you watch my show, my show, we're on 6 days a week. There have been a lot of stories, news stories that deal with history. Okay, so the more we understand history, the more we can understand a lot of these stories that are taking place, that especially that deal with politics, that deal with laws, that deals with policies putting in place, and the better position we're in to actually change a lot of what's taking place. But a lot of times people don't understand history and don't understand what it is that they're seeing, what it is that's taking place. Okay, so I'm going to show you just a few of these, and then we'll do a brief overview of the online course that I teach. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. So we deal with thousands of years of history, and we deal with what led up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. Okay, I just posted the link here for it. You can register for it. You can watch from around the world. We do the class live on Saturdays, normally 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All the sessions are archived, so you can go back and watch it over and over again as well. And you'll still have access to the class after the class is over with. The class is regularly $130. It's on sale $80. So it's a 9-week online course. Okay, but just very briefly here, if you've been paying attention to the news, some of these stories you've seen, and they all tie into history. Okay, but unfortunately, Americans are woefully ignorant of history, and a lot of times we don't see the really understand what's taking place. So if we look at this article here, for instance, in Texas, so what we're seeing is that we see 361 voter suppression bills in 47 state legislatures across the country. And this is targeting African Americans, Hispanics, Latinos. Republicans are doing this to reduce how many people are voting so they can stay in power and win more elections. We see this in Texas. A Texas bill drew ire for saying it would preserve purity of the ballot box. Purity of the ballot box. Here's the phrase is history. And this is from the Washington Post. And purity of the ballot box dates back to the 1876 Texas Constitution. Okay, purity of the ballot box. And it was designed to lock African Americans out of voting. Okay, purity of the ballot box is more obscure. Several scholars said they were not aware of it being used for discrimination, and it was enshrined in the Texas Constitution 1876, which did not bar Black people from voting. To others, though, it conjures century-old justifications for excluding Black voters and rules that have disproportionately kept minorities from casting ballots. Okay, and the purity of the ballot box led to all-white primaries, like in 1918, all-white primaries in the state of Texas. Okay. So if you read this article, it ties into a history of disenfranchising African Americans. And politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources. and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. Okay, this is what politics is. Politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources, and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. You may have heard about critical race theory in different states, like the state of Idaho, banning critical race theory being taught in schools, Tennessee on the road to doing that as well. But there's no widespread effort to teach critical race theory in schools. It's largely taught at the college level, graduate level, law schools, things like this. This story went viral here from the Black News Channel. It was an interview that Dr. Mark Lamont Hill did with Vernon Jones. Now, Vernon Jones is a former state representative in Georgia. He's African American, but he's a Trump supporter, and he switched from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party. So Vernon Jones is running for governor of Georgia. Okay, he's not going to beat Stacey Abrams, number one, but he's running for governor of Georgia, and he said one of the things he would do if he becomes governor is sign an executive order to ban critical race theory being taught in schools. When he was asked what is critical race theory, he could not answer the question. Now, critical race theory is a legal analysis on the premise that race is a social construct, that is used to oppress people of color rather than a natural biological feature. Okay, this is critical race theory. Now, if you read this article here, they go on to cite Britannica.com to further explain critical race theory. And critical race theorists hold that the law and legal institutions in the United States are inherently racist insofar as they function to create and maintain social, economic, and political inequalities between whites and non-whites, especially the African Americans. So this is understanding how laws and policies negatively impact us. Racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race, which comes out of the ideology of European white supremacy. This is what racism is. Racism doesn't have anything to do with not liking people or calling people racial epithets or things like this. Racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race, which comes out of the ideology of European white supremacy. So the more we understand history and history and law intersect, okay, the more we understand history and law, the better we can understand how we got to this point, and the better we can understand what needs to be put in place, policies that need to be put in place, what we need to do to get to where it is that we want to, where we want to get. Okay, people's history and culture teaches them how to deal with the problems of the past, in the present, and the future to meet the needs of the community. So this is one of the reasons why history and culture is so important. We see that there's an attack on the 1619 Project by many Republicans. Senator Mitch McConnell sent a letter to the new Secretary of Education, Miguel Cardona, demanding that the Department of Education abandon curriculum in American schools that McConnell argues tells a revisionist history of America's founding. And McConnell claims these programs, such as the New York Times 1619 Project, reorient the view of American history, quote, away from their intended purposes toward a politicized and divisive agenda. So he doesn't want, and it was about 3 dozen Republicans that signed this letter, don't want the 1619 Project, don't want schools to be able to get grant money to teach the 1619 Project in schools. Okay, this is what this is about, and they don't want. Many Republicans don't want systemic racism taught in schools. They don't want the history of racism and different things like this to be taught in school. So read this article here. McConnell sends letter to Education Secretary demanding removal of the 1619 Project from federal grant programs. This is from CNN.com from April 30th, 2021. Okay, so we see all these different stories that deal with politics, but they tie it to history. All right, we look at this one here. This is from May 12th, 2021. This is in Tennessee. Okay, how's everybody doing today? Share this broadcast on your social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in also. This is in Tennessee. Tennessee bans critical race theory. Tennessee bans public schools from teaching critical race theory amid national debate. Okay. Now, this is from May 12th, 2021. This is something that Republicans are jumping on now. There's no widespread effort to teach critical race theory in schools, especially in high schools, but they're using this as a lightning rod. And when you ask them what is critical race theory, most of them can't tell you this, but many people don't want the real history taught in schools. Many people don't want the real history taught in schools, okay? And don't want the real history of slavery, don't want to deal with racism, systemic racism, things like this. The Tennessee General Assembly has banned the teaching of critical race theory, passing a law at the very end of the legislative session to withhold funding from public schools that teach about white privilege, So you don't want people to learn about white privilege, to learn about racism, to learn about white supremacy, to learn about systemic racism, things like this, right? If you don't want it taught in schools, then how do you address it? How do you correct it? If you don't want it taught in schools, how do you address it? How do you correct it? Okay. This is this people are now critical race theory. And when we teach this history in school, when we teach it to children, it's not designed to make white children feel guilty. This not designed to make white children feel guilty. Okay. It's designed to keep history from repeating itself. This is why this is why this history has to be taught. It's designed to keep history from repeating itself. What you know about a people is largely based upon what you think about a people. I'm sorry, the way you treat a people is largely based upon what you know about a people. What you know about a people is largely based upon what you have been taught about a people. What you've been taught about a people is largely based upon what you've read, heard, and seen about a group of people. Okay. So if you largely been fed lies and stereotypes about African Americans, you don't understand history and the origins of this country, then that's a recipe for disaster. And all you have to do is look at the legislation that is coming out of state legislatures trying to suppress these voter restriction bills. You look at bills tied to trying to you look at bills tied to restricting what can be taught in schools, and you see that you're dealing with people who have a very poor understanding of history. Okay. And that's dangerous. That's dangerous when you have people who are ignorant of history crafting laws and policies that impact 330 million people. How's everybody doing today? Okay, everybody share this broadcasting on social media platforms. We're just here for a few minutes. I want to give you an overview, about a brief preview of the online course that I teach on Saturdays. It's a 9-week online course on Saturdays called Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Okay, so next class is going to be today. We're going to start up shortly here. So you can register for the class. It's normally 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, but we'll start a little bit later today. And you can register for the class and join us live in the class. We posted the link here. So we deal with thousands of years of history and what led up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. You can also go to our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Right on the home page, scroll down. You'll see the information for the online course right here. Click here to register here. It takes you to the next page. And then click here to enroll. So the class is regularly $130. It's on sale $80. It's a 9-week online course. Consists of about 18 hours. All the sessions are recorded. We do it live. You can join us live in class. But all the sessions are archived, so you can go back and watch it over and over again as well. Okay. And as soon as you register, you can also watch the class we did last Saturday. And I taught this class in February and March of 2021. You can go watch those sessions also. Okay. So, but we see all these stories taking place right now that in the news that deal with history. Okay. And they deal with policies and things like this. You had this one here out of, I think this was out of Tennessee. This was Jeff Lafferty out of Tennessee, Tennessee State Representative Jeff Lafferty, okay, who did not understand what the Three-Fifths Compromise of 1787 was in the U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 3, Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3 of the U.S. Constitution. GOP state lawmakers, the Three-Fifths Compromise was actually good. The Three-Fifths Compromise was actually good. In the course of arguing against teaching about systemic racism in schools, some GOP lawmakers suggest the original constitutional sin was somehow anti-slavery. The Three-Fifths Compromise was not anti-slavery. It was designed to keep the South from counting their slave population, counting the entire slave population, which would give them total dominance in the House of Representatives. So it was an agreement between the South and the North to count 3/5 of the population of those enslaved per state to determine how many seats in the House of Representatives states would have, slaveholding states would have. If they counted, the South wanted the full population counted, the North is saying, well, you don't even want to recognize them as being humans. So how are you going to count the full population? Okay. But no, that wasn't designed to abolish slavery or lead to abolishing slavery. No, not at all. So these are just a few, and there's a lot more if you watch my show daily. There are a lot more stories that tie into history. But I want to flip over to the PowerPoint presentation, because in the class we do a PowerPoint presentation also. And I just want to do a quick overview here to show you some of the content. So there was a study from the, here are a couple more articles as well, very quickly here. A couple more articles, recent articles: mock slave auctions, racist lessons, how U.S. history class often traumatizes, dehumanizes Black students. Okay, we see this often, especially during the month of February, where you hear about what I call slave lessons gone wrong, slave lessons gone wrong. And you'll hear about lessons dealing with African American history, and they'll have mock slave auctions and reenactments of different aspects of slavery and things like this. And this can be very traumatizing to students, but especially African American students. Then this one right here from, so this first one was from USA Today. This one also from USA Today: Republican state lawmakers want to punish schools that teach the 1619 Project. Now, even though the 1619 Project is flawed, there are aspects that you can take from it to use as part of an overall curriculum, but it should not be attacked. Okay, I mean, this is white supremacy that we're looking at and trying to keep the real history of this country from being taught. There's a study from the Southern Poverty Law Center called "Teaching Hard History American Slavery," Teaching Hard History American Slavery, and I referenced this study in the online class. You can download it from splcenter.org, Southern Poverty Law Center's website, Teaching Hard History American Slavery, Teaching Hard History American Slavery. It's a 52-page study that documents how the history of slavery is being incorrectly taught in schools all across the country and what can be done to more correctly teach the history. Okay. And it's a, in the study they surveyed 1,000 high school seniors and found out how little they knew about the history of slavery. And among 12th graders, only 8% could identify slavery as the central cause of the U.S. Civil War beginning. Only 8% could identify slavery as the central cause of the U.S. Civil War beginning. For fewer than 1/3, or 32%, could correctly name the 13th Amendment of 1865 as the formal end of slavery, with a slightly higher share, 35%, choosing the Emancipation Proclamation of January 1st, 1863, and fewer than 46% of high school seniors, 12th graders surveyed, of the 1,000 that were surveyed across the country, fewer than 46% could identify the Middle Passage as the transport of enslaved Africans across the Atlantic Ocean, okay, to North America. You can read this article here, What Kids Are Really Learning About Slavery. This is from theatlantic.com from February 1st, 2018. What kids are really learning about slavery, because this article right here gives you some insight And it also probably means their parents don't know this information as well. So if this is not corrected, these people grow up to be politicians, attorneys, judges, police officers, doctors, etc., and not really understanding how laws and policies shape history and how we got to this point, and what in the laws and policies that need to be put in place to correct the harmful policies. This is something that critical race theory looks at as well. And we have to understand that politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources, and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. So some of the things that we look at, some of the things I deal with in the online course, and I do a PowerPoint presentation. We have book references, articles, video clips, everything. You don't have to buy any of the books to follow along in class, but some books you may have on your shelf, like Before the Mayflower by Lerone Bennett Jr. Also use The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence by Dr. David Imhotep. And he actually spoke to my last class. I may have him speak again to this class. The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence by Dr. David Imhotep, because we deal with the ancient African presence in the Americas, going back at least 51,700 years ago in the land today we call the United States of America, because the African people were here in this land even before Native Americans came into existence. And I'm not dealing with conspiracy theory. I'm dealing with documented evidence. So some of the things we deal with are, what was the transatlantic slave trade? What were some of the events that led up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place, starting? You can't start looking at this history in 1441 with the Portuguese going into Mauritania, which is looked at as the beginning of the transatlantic slave trade. You have to deal with thousands of years of history that leads up to that taking place. And you have to look at the 800-year occupation of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors. And the Moors are taking the teachings from the Nile Valley region of Africa, from ancient Kemet, into Europe. And this is bringing Europe out of the Dark Ages, okay? So, you know, one of my teachers, Professor Kabahaya Wata Kamene, says to understand the existence of something, you must first understand the pre-existence of existence. And as I say, historical events don't happen in a vacuum. They are the culmination of a sequence of historical events that lead up to a larger event taking place. What role did Christopher Columbus play in the spread of the transatlantic slave trade? Columbus is crucial to the transatlantic slave trade, to laying the foundation of it in the on his 4 voyages in the Caribbean, and in Haiti, Jamaica, Puerto Rico, Honduras, Panama, and he's central to the spread of the transatlantic slave trade as well, even though it existed before he set sail August 3rd, 1492 on the Nina de Pinta in Santa Maria. When did Africans first come to the U.S. as slaves, or enslaved Africans? Because the Spanish were taking Africans into the territory we call South Carolina and Georgia in 1526. This is 93 years before August 20th, 1619 in Virginia. All right. So even though August 20th, 1619 did happen, one, African people were here for tens of thousands of years before that in this land we call the United States of America. Two, the Spanish were involved in the transatlantic slave trade before the British get involved, and they're taking Africans into South Carolina and Georgia, that territory, that area, in 1526. Did Africans sell themselves into slavery? We deal with that complicated history because the way it's often taught is not accurate. Were African people in America before the slave trade? Yes, we were. This was our land, stolen from us. We were here for tens of thousands of years. The Khoisan have the oldest DNA on the planet. They come from Southern Africa. They go all around the world. They're the ancestors to the Ainu and the Twa, the short-statured people, the Khoisan, and they were here in this land. There was a discovery in 2004 in Allendale County, South Carolina, by Dr. Albert Goodyear, who's an archaeologist at the University of South Carolina, and they found 13 different types of evidence thoroughly documenting an African presence in this country going back at least 51,700 years ago, okay? And that's Dr. David Imhotep deals with this in his book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence. He's a friend of mine. I've interviewed him about 16 times. Page 14 of his book deals with the discovery from Dr. Albert Goodyear in 2004. And at this campsite in Allendale County, South Carolina, they found artifacts, architecture, campsites, carvings, Egyptian writings, footprints in lava, genetic M174D haploid groups, dealing with linguistics and paintings, dealing with DNA and genetics. They found linguistics, paintings, skulls, skeletons, structures, and tools. They found 13 different types of disciplines, 13 different types of evidence documenting an African presence in this land we call the United States of America, dating back at least 51,700 years ago. This is something that he deals with in his book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence, that came out in 2011. His new book should be out any month now. I just talked to him a few weeks ago, and he's working on the footnotes for the book and the index. This is a picture of Dr. Albert Goodyear. This is an article from ScienceDaily.com, ScienceDaily.com, okay? ScienceDaily.com is a scientific website, and they have all different types of scientific discoveries there. This article is from 2004. New evidence puts man in North America 50,000 years ago, from ScienceDaily.com. This article is a synopsis. Well, this summary right here. This is a synopsis of the article and a synopsis of his discovery. Radiocarbon tests of carbonized plant remains, where artifacts were unearthed last May along the Savannah River in Allendale County by University of South Carolina archaeologist Dr. Albert Goodyear, indicate that the sediments containing these artifacts are at least 50,000 years old, meaning that humans inhabited North America long before the last ice age. So you can read this article, it's still there. You can read more about this discovery. This is tens of thousands of years before the transatlantic slave trade starts. This documents African people being in this land we call the United States of America. Okay. But when we teach this history, we want to start our history in this country in 1619. Yes, August 20th, 1619 in Virginia took place. It was Hampton, Virginia, Point Comfort in Hampton, Virginia. It wasn't Jamestown. Yes, that did happen, but we were here for tens of thousands of years before that in this land, and this was our land stolen from us. We were here even before Native Americans came into existence. So we deal with the 800-year occupation of Europe. We deal with the 800-year occupation of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors, which is a crucial period of time to understand. Shocking archaeological discoveries that are causing experts to rethink everything. Insurance companies that took out insurance policies on slave ships and enslaved Africans on the plantations, like the Nautilus Mutual Life Insurance Company, which was founded in 1845. I think it was Manhattan, and they later became known as the New York Life Insurance Company. And they took out the first 3 years, something about 500 insurance policies on enslaved Africans on the plantations. Okay. Freemasonry, America and the Founding Fathers, origins of the terms America, Africa, and more. Okay. The problem with slave movies, while we're being bombarded with slave movies and slave themed TV shows, this continues. There's a new Underground Railroad type limited series, and that history needs to be taught. But there's so many other aspects of our history that we could do a limited series on. We could do a limited series on ancient Kemet. We could do a limited series on the Songhai Empire, Mali. We could do one on Mansa Musa, okay, the richest man in the history of the world, who became emperor of the Mali Empire 1312 AD. We can there's so much that we can look at, and we're locked into dealing with slavery. Okay, there's so much. I understand that there are certain aspects that need to be explored, but we need to have a balance. We don't have a balance. Okay, we don't have a balance when it comes to a lot of these historical films. And if they do something dealing with ancient Egypt, they have Europeans portraying ancient Egyptians. We do it Asar, Aset, and Heru and the origins of the Immaculate Conception story. Okay, the Greeks called them Osiris, Isis, and Horus. And Heru, born of a virgin birth on December 25th to the Virgin Aset. Links to ancient Kemet, Egypt, and early Christianity, Freemasonry and America, and the fake Willie Lynch letter 1712. These are just a few of the things that we deal with in an online course, okay? And let me see something here. Do archaeological discoveries, Egypt of the West. Yeah, the Tekken, symbol of resurrection coming from the story of Asar, Aset, and Heru. There are about 1,200 tekenu all throughout ancient Kemet. And this ties into Freemasonry as well. All this history is connected, okay? How's everybody doing today? I'm doing a brief overview of the online course that I teach on Saturdays. We're about to start the class. So I have to jump off to start the class. I'm starting a little later today. Normally it's 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I was up late editing video of my radio show, so we're starting a little later today. You can register for the online course here or at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. I just posted the link. It's a 9-week, 18-hour online course that I teach, and we deal with thousands of years of history and what led up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. But when we look at it, once again, all the sessions are recorded. We do it live. All the sessions are recorded. So if you miss any of it, you can go back and watch it. When we look at the word Mason is derived from the Latin words mass and sun. Mason means child of light and expresses the desire to pursue light, which is a metaphor for the sun, which symbolizes knowledge. The term child of light or sons and daughters of light were first used to identify students who completed 42 years of study in the temples of ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt. Many Masonic temples were modeled after the temples of Kemet, places where light or knowledge was imparted in a series of steps or degrees. So when you go to college, liberal arts college, things like this, and you get your credentials in a series of degrees, associate's degree, bachelor's degree, master's degree, PhD, this is where this concept comes from, okay? And George G.M. James also deals with this in Stolen Legacy as well. And he deals with the several liberal arts. He deals with the trivium and the quadrivium and the arithmetic and the logic and different things like this, the rhetoric, etc. If you read Egypt on the Potomac by Tony Browder, Browder goes deeper into this. Look at pages 18 and 32. Browder's a brilliant historian. I've interviewed him a number of times. Then we see that the Moors are taking these teachings from ancient Kemet, the Nile Valley region of Africa, into Europe, teaching this to Europeans. We're going to see the Knights Templar formed in 1118 AD during the Second Crusade. We're going to see when the Knights Templar disbanded, those teachings go underground. They resurface as the Freemasons and the Rosicrucians and these different secret societies, etc. But we're going to see those teachings then come back to this land, as well with the quote unquote founding fathers, or as Dr. Francis Cress Welsing called them, the founding fathers. 50 of the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence and 13 of the 39 signers of the U.S. Constitution were Freemasons. 4 of the 5 U.S. presidents were Freemasons as well, okay? And there have been 14 Freemasons who have been U.S. presidents. Now, I'm not talking about conspiracy theory stuff. I'm talking about understanding real history, okay? And then also, of course, we have to deal with Asar, Aset, and Heru, who the Greeks called Osiris, Isis, and Horus. All this ties into African history and culture, mythology, etc. Okay, so these are just a few of the things that we deal with in the online course that I teach on Saturdays, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school, okay? So you can join us in class. You can register we'll post a link here, and you can join us in class because I'm about to start it up. Starting a little later today. Normally it's 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But I got to bed really, it's about 6 in the morning when I finally got to bed. So we're starting up a little late today. And as soon as you register, you can join us in class, but also you can watch the class we did last Saturday. And you can watch the when I taught the session in February and March. All that's archived. It's a 9-week online course. It's about 18 hours. And you can watch it whenever you get ready to as well. Watch from around the world, but we deal with thousands of years of history and what led up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. All right, look, we have to get out of here. We'll see you in class. Remember, right now it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you